I haven't been sure what I wanted to do with this channel. Some of my early videos are pretty rough, so please don't judge me.
They mostly come out at night. Mostly.
I'm going to try to tighten production up and get on a regular upload schedule. I never thought I'd get a subscriber or ever see a video with 1,000 views, but I like to keep the discussion going. And now we've got some stuff to talk about. The big Star Wars Skywalker saga is over, so I thought I'd start at the beginning. In my last video, I alluded to a theory I had about Star Wars when it came to macro and micro storytelling. I said the prequels had good macro storytelling, but bad micro storytelling. The original trilogy had good macro storytelling and good micro storytelling, and the new trilogy, the sequels, had bad both. Bad macro storytelling and bad micro storytelling. So I wanted to explain that a little more using Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, directed by George Lucas, written by George Lucas. Okay, macro storytelling. What does that mean? Macro storytelling is about how does the world work? Does it disappear when the protagonist closes their eyes? How many parts are moving independently from the protagonist? Micro storytelling is how does the plot work? In sequence, how are they working? Is it natural? Is it contrived? Are the characters real? Do they have real flaws, genuine flaws, not fake flaws? Are there consequences for the things characters do, or is it just on a track? Are the stakes clear, and is there tension? To illustrate these principles, we're going to look at the very first scene of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Now, this movie is widely panned. It has a terrible score, but I always thought there was something endearing about it, and I wasn't sure what it was. But I think at this point in our career as moviegoers and movie criticizers, we kind of have to move away from the reductive good or bad dichotomy here, because that doesn't really tell a story. Now, everybody's seen this scene, but just to recap, the 5-year-old captain tells the fish people a couple of monks are here to negotiate a trade deal because the fish people have all the sushi. A gender-fluid appliance brings them Monster Energy drink. Hologram Tupac tells the fish people to kill the monks, but the monks learn super breath holding from Super Mario. They fight some armadillos and use a super run. They also learn from Super Mario. They then use a super jump. They learn from Super Mario and stow away on some ships. Natalie Portman, who's really Keira Knightley, who's really Natalie Portman, whines at the fish people about her sushi order. And that's the scene. Now, this scene has some terrible micro storytelling. In fact, here's a list of the bad micro storytelling aspects of this scene. A few notable standouts: the representative of the threat in the scene is completely non-threatening. To create tension in this situation, they could have used somebody who's a little more imposing, a little more scary, to be the one who's fielding the communications between the fish people and the monks. Also, the movie anchors us to what death means in this universe. In this very first scene, our would-be protagonists don't care whatsoever about the people who they came over with who were killed. They're not mentioned again in the rest of the Skywalker saga.
You were right about one thing, Master. The negotiations were short.
Neither of the Jedi care or mention one iota about the two people who were murdered on the way over here. This gives us an idea. It messes with our brain that says this is what death means, so it undermines the stakes for the rest of the series. Having said those things, the scene actually has really good macro storytelling. Now keep in mind, most movies are centered around a protagonist, and the entire world is dependent upon the protagonist. If you want to watch a dry, boring video that I made about Man of Steel that talks about this false world theory of film criticism, then you can go ahead and do that. But this scene introduces a bunch of moving parts that move independently. There's the Jedi Council, the Senate that has some kind of relationship with the Jedi, and the Jedi have some relationship with the Jedi Council. There's the Trade Federation, which seems to have its own interests. There's Naboo, which seems to have its own interests, independent of all the other things that are going on. These are several independently operating moving parts that remain part of the macro story for the duration. You see this repeatedly with George Lucas. He's good at putting together worlds. He's just really terrible at everything else. One of the big things that is completely lost in the sequel trilogy is the sense of a functional world outside of whatever's happening with the protagonist. The reason that Star Wars has been so resonant for so long is that it feels like a world that can function on its own. So many big franchises are like this, and it could be the genius of the creator, or it could be just a lightning strike chance occurrence. But whatever the case, there are some worlds we want to see more of. We want to see different characters plugged into. And there are some worlds that just disappear when we close our eyes.